So welcome back this week. This week we're making some delicious apple and oat bars. We're going to use a couple of different ingredients today. Today we're using these Granny Smith apples. We'll talk a little bit more about them. They're a little tartar, right? So they're not as sweet as normal apples, but they're pretty good. We're going to show you how to toast up some nuts. We're using almonds and walnuts today. Toasting them really brings out some good flavor, so we'll show that. And then we have a couple of different flours, right? This week we talked all about fiber, so we have whole wheat flour, and we have oats here as well. The oats, the whole wheat flour, the apples, the nuts, they're all full of fiber, right? And that's gonna be great for us.
Let's start by chopping the almonds and walnuts. Chop them into bite-sized pieces before gathering them and putting them into a dry, hot frying pan. Nuts are a great source of protein and fiber. They also have heart-healthy unsaturated fats, which we are going to draw out by dry toasting them. Keep swirling and tossing the nuts in the pan so they don't burn. Once warm and toasted, take the nuts off the heat and put them in a mixing bowl. Once the nuts have cooled down, the crumble and the crust can start to be made. Start by adding 3/4 cup of oats, 1/4 cup of whole wheat flour, and 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. The oats and whole wheat flour are great sources of soluble fiber, which is great for maintaining a healthy heart. Then, add 1/2 cup of light brown sugar. When using brown sugar, it is best to pack the sugar into the measuring cup to get an accurate measurement. Then, add 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a pinch, or about 1/8 teaspoon, of baking powder. Baking powder helps doughs and batters inflate by creating gas, which helps it raise. Once the dry ingredients are together, mix and toss them thoroughly.
Yeah, we're just gonna make some crumblies, right? So before our fats go in, we just wanna make sure this is well crumbled. Our sugar's kind of broken up a little bit. And you can see it's creating this nice, almost like sandy texture of the nuts. It's coating everything, so that when we go to add our fats, which in this case are going to be canola oil and butter, and we'll talk about those different fats in a minute. When we add those, it's going to create this nice crumble. Butter is actually a saturated fat. Today we're using unsalted butter, right? We added salt to our dish, so we don't need to use salted butter. It just adds unnecessary sodium, and I like the taste of unsalted butter better, right? So unsalted butter is a saturated fat. So what are saturated fats? Saturated fats are those fats that can sometimes get stuck in our heart and sometimes increase our cholesterol. So this recipe uses canola oil, which is an unsaturated fat, and butter, which is a saturated fat. It uses a little bit of each, right? So that way we can reduce the amount of saturated fats, but we still get the nice buttery flavor. It helps the solid fats in the butter help kind of hold our structure of our crumble and our crust together. So we want to make sure we use a little bit of this, but we can also substitute in some canola oil, which is that unsaturated fat. Now you see this unsaturated fat is a liquid at room temperature, which means it's a liquid in my body. So when I consume it, right, when I eat it, it ends up moving through my body a lot easier. I don't have to put work into breaking it down. Butter at room temperature is a solid, right? Which means my body, inside my body, it probably is still a little solid, which means we have to put a little bit of work into it to break it down. So that's why we're using both of them instead of just all butter, right? So we can cut down on the amount of saturated fat.
Melt 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter and add that and 3 tablespoons of canola oil to the dry ingredients before mixing thoroughly. Next, grease the bottom and sides of a 8x8 glass pan using a small piece of unsalted butter or cooking spray. This will help stop the crust and oatmeal bars from sticking to the pan. Then take about half the crust dough and press it into the bottom of the pan.
So now we're gonna work on this apple. I have this nice, delicious Granny Smith. They're pretty tart, but they're great for baking because as you bake them, more sugars come out of them. So we're gonna core it, and I'll show you how to core it, and we'll kind of go from there. So to core it, what we're doing get a flat surface. You always want to cut with a flat surface, so that way you're not rolling we're not rolling our apple or anything like that. So flat surface, I like to then take it in half and then take my knife on an angle and just slice out the core. If you don't want to waste that much, you can always cut that too.
Once cored, slice and chop the rest of the apples into bite-sized pieces before putting them in a mixing bowl. Apples are a good source of fiber and great for your digestion. To the bowl, add a 1/4 cup of dried cranberries, a tablespoon of flour, and 2 tablespoons of honey. With dried cranberries, watch out for the added sugar. Because cranberries are so tart, they tend to have a lot of sugar added to them when they are dried. The flour helps to thicken the apple juices when they are released into the dish while it's cooking. Once thoroughly mixed, add the filling on top of the crust, filling the pan to the top, before adding and patting down the rest of the crust on top. Once the pan is all filled, bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit in the oven for 40 minutes, or until the apples are soft and the top is lightly browned. Once out of the oven, let the bars rest until completely cooled before cutting and serving. These oatmeal bars are full of both types of fiber and a great addition to any breakfast. And as always, don't forget your fork.